Natwampane
ay 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 ay
tuvwange ay 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 natwampane ay ay ay.
Hello again and welcome to the 60th conversation in the series of talks we've been having around the global minimum standards. So today we'll be looking at staff care and support, and my name is Walia Malama. With me on the panel I have my colleagues from various institutions. I have Anne. Welcome, Anne.
Thank you.
Anne is coming in from Norwegian Church Aid. And we also have on my other side Dr. Dilau. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you for having me, Walia.
Dr. Dilau is a psychiatrist from Ministry of Health. So, staff care and support around GBV and the people that are providing care for these virus survivors coming in. What is it that we have to understand when we look at staff care and support?
Okay, Walia, let me start it off and just give an overview.
Yeah.
So, talking about gender-based violence, we're talking about a sensitive topic, but
Absolutely.
we're also talking about a topic that is overwhelming for many.
Absolutely.
We often look at gender-based violence from a lens of the survivors, the ones that we have helping.
Yeah.
But we often overlook the people that are caring for the survivors, and these are the people that we talk about staff care. And I would just like to say the carers,
Yes.
in a nutshell. Now, the carers go through many realities, and sometimes they actually have a lived experience of that reality that the survivor is actually sharing.
Yeah. Yeah.
For a staff that is actually helping a survivor, they have to overcome and maneuver many emotional, psychological, as well as physical experiences that a survivor that shares.
Yeah.
So with that said, staff care is also looking out for the actual carers that are helping these survivors.
Yeah.
And just to give it a human lens, a reality, many times when we as healthcare workers are actually helping survivors, or counselors or community attendants, when we're helping survivors, we often actually, try to just see how much of the wound that the survivor is taking.
Yeah.
Not just the physical, but also the psychological. We have values ourselves as individuals, as carers of the survivors. And these values are things that we believe in and that build our morals.
Yeah.
And our morals are basically things that we believe in and we aspire to be. Oftentimes, as carers of survivors, we often have what we call moral injury, where we feel like, are we doing enough?
Yeah.
Is this enough? Or what else can I do to actually help?
Yeah.
And this actually blurs the boundaries between what we can do, what we should do, and what else can be done. And this actually makes it very overwhelming for the staff aiders. Another thing that we need to understand on overview of from a health perspective is what we call a compassion fatigue. Compassion is basically your ability to feel for someone else, your ability to genuinely care for someone else. Many times as staff who are working with survivors of gender-based violence, there is that element of compassion fatigue, where you feel like, I've given so much, I feel so much, I need some space and time as well. And there's that fatigue where you're just overwhelmed. You're not in your workplace, you're not interacting with the survivor, but you're feeling that outside your workplace, in your day-to-day reality. So that's another thing. Another thing is vicarious trauma. Now, these are very big terms.
Yes, they are.
So vicarious trauma is basically, there are times when, a carer is supporting a survivor in an experience that the staff has themselves, experienced in their lives.
Like
and when that
similar situation to what the survivor is coming in with.
Exactly. A similar situation that a person has, experienced in their past life, and now a survivor is sharing that. That can actually lead to a vicarious trauma, where the staff now will actually leave that moment with the survivor, and that is actually traumatic to both of them. And that actually creates some sort of overwhelming situation. So when we talk about a context of why or what is it, it's basically giving the care for the caregiver.
I like the rhyme of caring for the caregiver, because I liked the phrase that says you cannot give from
You can't pour from an empty cup.
You need to fill your cup first and then care for the others. So is there a connection, Doc or Anne, for example, to how the various traumas that you've mentioned that the caregiver is going through And how would this then affect the provision of services, for example, to the survivor? Because in as much as, yes, we acknowledge, like you were saying, it's very possible for a caregiver or a care provider to go through a traumatic situation that they went through as a young girl, as a young man, but then it has, come up all over again as they are having that interaction with the survivor. So are there some effects around the relationship between the survivor and the caregiver, and how would this affect, for example, this relationship?
Yeah. So on that point, as we place the psychosocial counselors or the caregivers within the different spaces for survivors, in this case, I want to use a case of Luapula, where we have the many one-stop centers in 12 districts. So the staff have been trusted to be in that space to provide services to the survivors. But then how much responsibility is the management, for example? How much responsibility are we taking to ensure that those staff that have been placed there are comfortable enough to offer the services to the survivors, but also they have a space to vent out, to relieve, like he has explained about compassion fatigue. You're doing this every day. At some point, it's just human to get numb, because you've been doing it again and again. So how much responsibility are we taking so that we are supporting the staff best in the one-stop centers or in any other area that receives survivors? How much responsibility are we taking on ourselves to make sure that they have that care? Because if that misses, then the staff would either be numb. So you do
and
this.
Numb is not good. It's not what we're looking for
Numb is
when
not
it comes to GBV cases,
exactly.
isn't it?
Yeah, because there's life after work. There's life out of work. So how are we taking care of them, or providing avenues where they can take care of themselves and vent it out, so that they're able to receive survivors on a like pouring. Now, how are we filling their cups? In a good way. How are we filling their cups? How are we supporting them? And so when it comes to support, I'm not just narrowing it down to the support where they can vent it out, but also supporting them with the skills, with the techniques of how to handle these survivors. I want to look at a case of a counselor who sees a child survivor. We're seeing a 3-year-old who has been defiled. And then you're seeing someone who's the age of your mother who's raped. And so you have to live with this again and again. So how are they offered that support, both psychologically for them to heal and deal, but also to know how to handle the survivors so that they don't judge themselves? Because at the end of the day, when they don't have enough care or enough support, then the person who will suffer is not just them, but the survivors as well.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate the point that you bring out, and about the effect which Walia is asking about. It's not just the effect that the survivors are going to experience because of the carer giving that support to them, but let's look at the carer themselves. To just be honest, this is their job, this is their vocation, this is their profession, and this is a service that they're offering to survivors. But then let's look at them as individuals as well. I like that Anne is saying that these individuals go back home. They have their own lives to live, they have their own realities to live. They actually sometimes bring that trauma with them in their homes, and they themselves may actually bring this into their interpersonal relationships with either their spouses, their children, and there is that effect that has a ripple consequence in their day-to-day reality. I will also say that many individuals, carers in this case that we've labeled them as staffers, they actually end up with risky habits in terms of coping with this compassion fatigue, with this moral injury that they face, or with this psychological burden that they face. And when I say risky habits, as a psychiatrist, I'll be honest and open again, ripping off the band-aid. Many go into substance misuse. They cope with substances. They may forget the boundaries in what is normal and what is abnormal in coping with their work stressor. Other individuals just say, I can't do this, and they quit. And this, I would like to mention, is a loss to the system and to the profession. Why? Because let's just say, for example, Anne, how many years are you working in this space?
11 years.
11 years. Imagine we lose that human capital of 11 years, where Anne just decides to say, I have done so much, I feel overwhelmed and I quit. This is why we need to constantly support and care for staffers. Another thing that I would also like to bring out is efficiency and effectiveness. Okay, over time, the effectiveness and efficiency in the job productivity comes down below average, and staffers are people, and they just look at any other case as a case, not as Walia who's come in with this problem or this condition. They just look at it as Walia, a GBV case, a file, and they just put them in these loads, and they don't give them that human nature that it deserves. So the effect and the consequences are just too many. Maybe they may not be feasible, but there are just too many to count.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I like how you've really just brought it down to narrowing people to case files and really taking away the humanity, because given the nature of GBV cases, it's important and very valuable that we maintain the human side of things, because these are different people, different emotions, and they process things differently. So you need that human side of the approach to be there and to be present. So do you have any, would you have any pointers, for example, simple pointers that you would provide to various organizations and institutions that have this vast number of care providers on some of the little daily things that they could do to just harness that care and support for the staff? Any quick pointers?
So I think it's important for us to be mindful of the caseload. I'll still, in Zambia, I'll still refer to Luapula, where in a day, maybe a psychosocial counselor, let's not even say in a day, in a month, a psychosocial counselor sees 50 cases.
50 in a month?
50 in a month. So if we are not mindful of that, we might just think in a month, maybe they're seeing 6 cases, which is a very big underestimation of what exactly they're seeing. And so with the caseload comes also the regular support, the debrief sessions. Debrief sessions, So looking at the caseload and what support is available for the psychosocial counselors to debrief, and to also classify these were complicated cases, these are pending cases, and also the closed cases. Because I feel when a counselor works with the survivor to the end and closes a case, it provides some satisfaction, and it's human nature. So how are we reminding them this so that they can also, we are tapping their back and reminding them that yes, this is a good job, so that when you get a difficult case, you have enough energy to go into it knowing, at least I'm doing something. So in this case, when we do that, we somehow deal with the issue that Doc has just mentioned, not counting survivors just as files, but as people that we are seeing that need to heal, need to recover, and need to be supported by us. So that for me would be a very important pointer to have.
Thank you so much, Anna. Doc, any pointers for organizations on how best to harness this staff care support?
Yes, Walia. For me, I would like to emphasize and talk about not reinventing the wheel, but rather just looking at it from a perspective of how can we prevent all the things that we've mentioned here and discussed. And the best way to do that is actually being deliberate and putting systems in place where staff and carers are actually being given the tools and empowered to actually look after themselves as they're supporting others. And this can be done through workshops where they're constantly being reminded of the job that they're doing and also how to look after themselves, having self-care tools embedded into the system. Also, the concept number 2 is having mandatory debriefing sessions. This could be monthly, where carers are actually sitting down in a group and discussing these cases that they find overwhelming and sharing best practices so that they're looking in and checking in on one another. The third thing is actually putting a budget line towards workshops, and these should be at least annually, where they're actually being taught to look at the the lines between work and life balance.
Yes. Home,
Very
work-life
important.
balance.
Identifying things like, what is moral injury, what is vicarious trauma, what is compassion fatigue, because sometimes you forget these things. Identifying your own red flags within yourselves of your coping habits. And the idea is, when they're taught these things constantly, they're able to label themselves and reach out to their managers and say, I need a time out, I need some space, or I need to get some help. And this actually helps not just themselves, but also the survivors that they're helping. And there are best practices currently available, which, as I said, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to incorporate it into existing systems so that it's strengthened.
Absolutely.
Sorry to cut you.
Please go ahead.
Just in addition to what Doc has mentioned, I think at the point of recruitment, because some staff would come maybe from a background where they've been practicing. Others might come fresh from college, from university, into this world, GBV or the service delivery world. And so maybe when faced with such challenges or with work-related stress, they might think this is just part of work. So letting them...
This is how the work flows.
Exactly. And I'm resilient, and I promise that I can handle
work
stress.
with minimum supervision.
Minimum supervision. So I think at that point of recruitment, it's important to tell them that these are some of the things that happen in this world, in the response world, so that they're aware when it happens. They don't just close in and not talk about it, but freely come out and discuss, so that it's easy for them to balance between work and normal life.
Absolutely.
So what Anne has just described now, she's beautifully talked about occupational risks and hazards that come in. And what she just said is, there are occupational risks with, carers and staffers that are supporting survivors. And one of them is, being aware from the start to say, in the real world, these are things that you may experience. And when you do, please reach out in due course before it's too late. And from a health perspective, prevention is better than cure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anne, and thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us in this discussion around staff care and staff support. I think it's very important for organizations and everyone else to understand that the survivor is as important as the care provider, because that relationship is the one that helps to facilitate the healing as well. So a survivor, a care provider who is unwell or not healed will infect, I'm just trying to put it in layman's language, will somehow affect the survivor's progress for that healing process. So thank you so much for joining us and taking the time to come through. That is all we had for you today around the minimum standards for GBV prevention, programming, and especially around the staff care and support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Natwampane tubwange natwampane